harumph. You get to edit out all the harumphs. You're a lucky guy. Okay. I'm Jim Bourne with the Aptos History Museum, actually with the Friends of the Aptos Library and the Aptos History Museum sponsoring this event about the motion picture The One-Way Trail, filmed in 1919 in Aptos. And we have here...
I'm David Kiehn from the Niles-Essanay Silent Film Museum. And we've got we're in our 1913 Nickelodeon movie theater that was built the same year that the Essanay Film Company built their studio just down the street. So it's a theater that we use to show silent films every Saturday night. We've been doing that since January 2005. And have shown hundreds of short and feature films here with live piano music.
And the Essanay Film Company was a studio like Paramount or 20th Century or...
That's right. It was one of the pioneering film companies of the early years, started in 1907 in Chicago, and the Western Division arrived here in Niles in April of 1912 and worked here for 4 years and made over 350 films. It was, I'd say, the most successful silent era movie company in the Bay Area. Charlie Chaplin worked here in 1915 and made 5 films, including The Tramp, which really boosted his career into the stratosphere.
Do we know the production company that made The One-Way Trail?
It was an independent production company headed by Leon T. Osborne. And he was best known during that time period as the producer for the Baby Marie Osborne movies, which starred his daughter, Marie Osborne. And, you know, he was an independent, small-time producer who had his ups and downs.
How would they have found Aptos?
By 1919, Hollywood producers were very aware of the Bay Area as a filming location, and it could have been promoted by people in Aptos, sending representatives down to Hollywood to say, here we are, and you should come here to make films. Or, you know, there've been films made in Santa Cruz and Boulder Creek and other areas. So, and, you know, Los Gatos, Essanay was there in 1910. So there were scouts all over the place looking for good locations to make that weren't available in Los Angeles area.
My understanding of the story of The One-Way Trail is that the male lead is a Mountie, and they thought that Aptos, and specifically the Forest of Nicene Marks, which was a very active lumbering operation in those days, was represented, I guess, Western Canada more than any other place. Mm-hmm. And so that was how it came to be chosen.
Yeah, you know, Hollywood was looking for locations that would be as close to Hollywood as possible without, you know, for instance, Pleasanton was a great location for films that looked like New England, you know, on the East Coast, and because they had white picket fences and old buildings and tree-lined streets, and Mary Pickford was there in 1917 to make Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. Ah. And the Tom Sawyer films, starring her brother Jack Pickford, were also made there. And Rio Vista often doubled for the Mississippi River for a lot of films. So Hollywood was pretty creative in getting California locations.
And it's sort of a big deal nowadays that, you know, such and such was shot on location. Mm-hmm. But it sounds as if a great deal of the things in those days were to some degree at least, shot on location. They weren't all just shot in a studio, somewhere in Hollywood in some gigantic open space.
In a way, they were doing both.
Right.
They all had the big studios where they would shoot their interior scenes and then go outside and shoot their location material wherever it was appropriate. So, all the big movie stars came to San Francisco and shot movies there and all around the Bay Area. Any big name movie star from the silent era you can name was here in the Bay Area shooting films.
How portable was the equipment they used?
Fairly portable. A camera and a tripod would weigh about 60 or 75 pounds. You didn't use much in the way of lighting because it was all outdoor, but you'd use reflector boards to fill in shadows. All the lighting and stuff was used in interiors that were at the Hollywood studios already. Although there were, in the case of One Way Trail, the whole film was shot on location.
Right,
They
yeah.
set up an open air stage and shot their interior scenes there.
I believe there are pictures from the UC Santa Cruz collection that one of the pictures, I looked through it and it did show the interior set, just a wall, a
Right.
couple of walls, and that was about it. What was the power source for the cameras?
Hand cranked, so no battery power
Right.
needed. It was all hand cranked by the cameraman who was so well versed in it, they could crank at any speed that they needed to.
Well, the speed, how did they maintain the speed? Is it,
For beginners, you would often come up with a musical theme that would give you a rhythm to crank 2 turns per second, which was considered the regular 16 frames a second silent speed, although that varied. By 1919, it was up to about 18 or 19 frames a second. But, the anvil chorus was a common cranking speed. A friend of mine, Sprague Anderson, used the Addams Family's theme to crank for when we were making a silent film here in Niles.
could the speed at which the film was made vary? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah, if you had an action scene that was not up to par, you could crank a little slower and that would give it a little extra zip when it was played back with the hand crank projectors that were used in the theaters. They often cranked a little faster in the projectors. The rumor was to get an extra showing during the day, you would crank a little faster. So the projectionist always had the last word. No matter what the cameraman cranked, the projectionist could crank at a faster speed to give it a little more zip, so to speak.
Well, for those of us who were introduced to silent films on television many decades ago,
Yeah.
and the sort of stock view or what you saw on screen was jerky people running
speed
around.
it up.
And but was that what the people in the theater would see?
No, and that's because for a long time, video had a whole difficult problem showing silent films at the right speed because of the hand cranking. It could be anywhere from 16 to 24 frames, and standard speed for talkies was 24 frames.
Right.
And so even old films that were shown in the theaters in the 50s, 60s, and 70s would often be shown at the wrong, too fast speed because everything was standardized at 24 frames. We've modified our projectors so that you can show them at any speed that you need to, and so that's what more modern projectors are
Are your
doing.
projectors hand cranked?
No, they've got, although do we have one hand crank projector in the booth that we occasionally use from the silent era, made in around 1920, and powers camera graphs. So we can use that one, but we've got more modern projectors from the 1970s that have been modified.
What was the film size?
It was 35 millimeter. That was the
Oh, it
standard
was?
from
Okay.
1894.
Okay.
Thomas Edison in New Jersey standardized that film size, 35 millimeter, with 4 perforations on each side of the film in 1894, and everybody duplicated that for whatever they were making. Projectors and cameras that other people made copied that format, and that's really what standardized it.
And the film stock that they used was extremely volatile, right?
That's right. Nitrate film stock was had a base that was akin to gun cotton, and it could if you can actually go on YouTube and look at videos of nitrate film being burned, and there's one that shows a reel of 1,000 feet of film, and somebody sets it on fire and the flames shoot up 20 feet in the air. So nitrate film was very volatile, but it had a resilience to it that you could run it through a projector many, many times before it started falling apart, getting ripped and torn and all that kind of stuff. The downside was that if you didn't take care of the film, it would deteriorate as well, and so that's why most of the silent films do not survive. And
This is a case in point, in fact. What happened to the one-way trail?
it was probably neglected. The negative just deteriorated and turned to dust, or somebody could have set it on fire to reclaim the $1.50 in silver that you would get from a reel of film. So, neglect was the default position of having a film lost forever.
This is Mark Reed of the Aptos History Museum. I forgot to prompt a question regarding the type of motion picture camera used in the one-way trail, so here is a post-conversation footnote. I reached out to local camera expert David Silver and shared with him Preston Sawyer's photograph of camera and cameramen during the filming of the one-way trail. David wrote back and identified the camera as a 35mm Bell & Howell model 2709. That's 2709. David characterized the camera as, quote, a major workhorse in the silent movie industry from its introduction in 1912 right up to the talkies, and many remained working well into the 1970s for animation and for no-sound secondary filming. Lots of variations on these cameras because each studio customized them according to their own specific pursuits, so no two look exactly the same, but nobody messed with the internal mechanisms. To this day, no other 35mm camera is as rock-solid and dependable as these.
I did a little, I'm going to put on my specs so I can see this, but I did a little lookup last night online, and apparently it was a fairly well-known, if lost, well-known movie, because under the Wikipedia bio for the writer, Charles Mortimer Peck, he was known for The One-Way Trail, 1920. Edith Sterling, who played the female lead, again, they referred to it, and also that it was unusual that in The One-Way Trail, 1919, they say, she rescues her male co-star. Jack Dill, or J. Webster Dill, one of the actors, played in The One-Way Trail. And who was, Alfred Hollingsworth, the villain, played Thundering Ames in The One-Way Trail. So it shows up, even though lost, it shows up fairly frequently. It's not unknown.
Yeah, it had probably a fairly wide distribution through the World Film Company, which was based in New York. But, you know, a few years later, that company went out of business, and so any negatives that they had in their care just were simply neglected. And you know, by the time talkies came in, silent films were considered a thing of the past, and nobody was taking care of their silent film collections. And most of the major studios also had fires because of the nitrate film stock, and so more films were lost that way. And so the World Film Office in New Jersey, I'm sure had a fire just like every other studio of its day. So
the silent films, I was curious, you know, the idea that there was an author, a writer. Is it even accurate to say a script writer?
Oh yeah, scripts were very common by that time period. We've got scripts in our collection from 1910, 1911 that were.
So when you're watching a silent film and they're doing a scene and the actors are seem to be speaking lines, they are in fact speaking lines?
Yeah, generally those lines were written in dialogue to either have in title cards, or, you know, people were fairly good lip readers too. You know, if they were saying something fairly simple, they didn't need a title card for it. You could see what they were saying on the screen, you know, larger than life on the screen.
So what percentage of the dialogue actually shows up in a title card?
It depends. If you were a good a director, you were trying to tell a story with as few title cards as possible. Bronco Billy Anderson, who made films here in Niles, prided himself in making films with as few title cards as he could, and some of his films don't have any title cards at all, or very, you know, one or two for a 15-minute film. So you could, you know, it was a visual medium, and they wanted to tell the story visually.
So a runtime of 15 minutes is?
For one reel of film, yeah. So a 5-reel film would be about 75 minutes long. And
do we know how long
I think
the
the one-reel trail was, I think, a 5-reeler.
Oh, okay, all right. So the players in it, again, well, how about Alfred Hollingsworth? Is this a name that rings a bell?
Yeah, he was popular in Hollywood, and I think probably had a fairly long career. I'm not sure how long. Edith Sterling, she worked in films until 1923.
And lived until, what, 1962?
Yeah. The director, Fred Kelsey, he was more known later on as a film actor.
As an actor, right.
I think his last directing effort was The One-Way Trail, but he worked in hundreds of films into the talkies.
Yeah, Wikipedia says he directed 37 films between 1914 and 1920.
Yeah.
And then he was caricatured as the detective in the 1943 MGM cartoon Who Killed Who, which would be fun to see.
He was playing detective roles in the silent era. One of his well-known silents is The Cat and the Canary, where he plays a detective, and I mean, he did that in dozens and dozens of films. He'd had over 500 film credits, so he was really active in film. Silent era, for instance, by 1915, Essanay was making 6 films a week for release. You know, they made over 2,000 films as a whole from 1907 to 1918. About 6 months would be a typical runtime. For short films, you could have in big cities to turn around from one day to the next. For feature films, a typical run was 1 week. If it was a really popular film, it might go for 2 or 3 weeks, but some of the big star movies in big theaters, movie palaces could run for quite a while, a couple of months, but a typical run was 1 week. And all the big studios were turning out feature films, hundreds in a year. Paramount Pictures was, I think, producing by 1919 somewhere around 100 features a year. A lot of the silent era actors had contracts with the big studios. Even the people who were independents, because so many films were being made by so many film companies, you would hop from one studio to another. So you could have a career for 20, 30 years or more. And same thing with directors and cameramen. Cameramen had 40, 50-year careers if they wanted to. Same thing with directors. So, it wasn't until the 1950s that competition with television created a problem with movie companies that led to their demise. But, there was a huge film business for decades. So
I'm trying to think of I wasn't there clearly in 1920, but how big was Aptos? How big was Santa Cruz? How big were the various population centers in, for example, Santa Cruz County, which is a small county?
Mm-hmm.
And how many of those individual places, Aptos, Capitola, Santa Cruz, Boulder Creek, Felton, Ben Lomond, had a movie theater?
I'd say just about all of them. I don't know, here in Niles, this theater came up in 1913. In Pleasanton, the Gym Theater was established in 1910. In the big cities, dozens of theaters. San Jose had quite a few theaters in the silent era. I'm sure there were 3 or 4 in Santa Cruz at least. It wasn't unusual for every little town to have a theater or a meeting hall that they would show films in.
And did they have popcorn? Did they have? Could you buy treats?
Generally, people would buy them from a store, a sweet shop, or someplace nearby and bring them into the theater. It wasn't until the early 1930s that concession stands in theaters were popular because the movie companies were demanding so much in their rental fees that they used concession stands in theaters to get extra income so that they could operate. In this theater, for instance, in Niles, they had 2 apartments and 2 storefronts in the front of the theater for extra income because Niles only had 1,400 people, and so that was the only way a theater in Niles could sustain itself. And they didn't run movies throughout the day. They only had films in the evenings and a matinee on the weekends. So in the big cities, they were operating Nickelodeon theaters 12 hours or more a day. So people would walk in and leave, and a theater could operate and make an income and a profit that way. So in the small towns, they had to have a different business plan so that they could be profitable.
I see over there a piano, and in fact over here another piano. I
Yeah.
don't imagine 2 pianos in a theater was the standard, but
No.
all right, let's say you're playing movies 12 hours a day. The pianist's hands must have been falling off, or did they have a rotating?
They might have had a rotating
Series
group.
of-
You know, in this theater, again, they only played movies in the evening, and when it opened, a brother and sister act in Niles played piano and violin. And we have two pianos because one of our pianists has a back problem, and turning his head to the screen in front of the theater is kind of painful, so he plays in the back of the theater.
So I was going to ask one more thing about, just on the piano. So the music that was played during the movies, the pianist was improvising, was working from Tchaikovsky. What was the?
Yeah.
How did they operate?
In those days, you know, home entertainment was usually a piano, and so people who were taught the piano played popular music and classical music, and so they had a repertory with sheet music, and if you were clever enough and good enough, you could improvise, and that's what they did in the movies during that time. Scores were not written for short films, and even when feature films became the norm, most features did not have a score written for those, and so you were improvising a lot with that. There were cue sheets for feature films that you could have suggestions of what to play for them, but for the most part, you were improvising, and that's what our piano players do. Yeah. And oftentimes, they haven't seen the films that they're playing for, but you wouldn't know the difference. They're so good at doing what they do.
Well, speaking of what they do, what do you do here, and what is your activity?
We were formed because we wanted to preserve the information, preserve the artifacts of the silent era, hopefully preserve the films as well, and we started collecting film prints, photographs, posters, lantern slides of coming attractions, anything that would relate to silent films, and especially the Essanay Film Company, which was the Western Division was based here in Niles. And we've now, we set up here in this 1913 movie theater in 2004 and started showing films every Saturday night with live piano music in January of 2005. We show talkies once a month on Sundays, Our Gang and Laurel and Hardy talkies, and we show feature films on Friday nights for public domain films from the talkie area from the 30s into more recent years, and we do film preservation as well. So
how do you do film preservation?
There's a number of ways to do that. It depends on the quality of the film. Our goal is to have a 35 millimeter preservation negative and positive print so that we can show it from our original projection booth on our screen. So we use the photochemical method with a film lab to preserve films onto film. We also scan films, and so we have digital versions that we can clean up and then put back onto film. And we also have a YouTube channel where we put programming that we've done onto that so that people can see it around the world.
What is the name of the YouTube channel?
Niles Film Museum, I think, and as is our website, nilesfilmmuseum.org.
And how can we all help?
go to our website and donate. We are a nonprofit, 501c3, and we exist because of the generosity of people who are interested in what we do. This is Rena Kiehn, my wife, and another board member at the museum. She's
My voice projects.
she is our public relations expert.
Hello?
There was some question about The Fog, which is another film that was shot in Aptos, and that one kind of has a different way of working than One Way Trail does. It was produced by Max Graff, who was a San Francisco native, and instead of shooting the whole thing on location, they just shot the exteriors, and then they went to San Mateo to shoot the interior scenes at a big studio, Pacific Studio in San Mateo. And Max Graff shot a lot of and produced a lot of films in the Bay Area using the Pacific Studio in San Mateo as their home base for shooting their interior scenes.
John wanted to know about Old Hutch. Was that the name? Does that ring a bell?
Wallace Beery film?
Wallace Beery, yes.
Yeah.
Also filmed, at least in part, in Aptos.
Yeah, they used the Max Graff model in that they filmed exteriors and then went back to the MGM studio to film their interior scenes. Talkies, which was what that one film was made, was a whole different way of working and much more complex than the silent film method. And with a one-way trail, there were less than 24 people in the whole production company making the film there. With Old Hutch, MGM brought about 200 people to work at that film. So, whole different way of working.
Okay, well, I think we have whetted everyone's appetite for the one-way trail and for silent films in general. So thanks very much to David and Rena and the Niles-Essanay
Silent Film Museum.